Alright, hi everyone, my name is Mandi Drevlow. I'm an industrial engineering student at Dunwoody College of Technology, and I'm also an electrical controls engineer at Design Ready Controls, or DRC. So here's a copy of my capstone poster. This showcases my company background, problem statement, and 5 deliverables that I achieved during my capstone project. I'll give you just 30 seconds or so to review this material. Alright, so let's step through each of these sections on the poster. So again, my company name is Design Ready Controls. We primarily manufacture control panels that are high volume, high variability for OEM customers, and we dabble a little bit with custom panels for direct customers as well. We have several primary industries. We mainly focus on HVAC and oil and natural gas. We also dabble a little bit in alternative energy. We have 4 locations. We have Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, Wilsonville, Oregon, Richmond, Virginia, and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And below is actually a picture of our brand new Brooklyn Park facility that we opened in December, so it's pretty spiffy. Our main competitive advantage is that we have this automated software called an APE system, or Automated Panel Expert, that we use to automate our panel design. So now that we know a little bit about my company, let's look at what the problem statement is. So the duration of our complicated projects can exceed quoted target by up to 33%, which results in higher than anticipated engineering costs. So what does this really mean? What I'm trying to say is that each APE system requires a certain amount of time to set up and configure. We have a lot of difficulty estimating how much time that's going to take up front, and typically we usually run pretty late on completing this deliverable, so our actual duration is almost always longer than what we expect. So this results in higher engineering overhead costs, and it also results in a loss of customer confidence and trust when we don't make that final deadline. So we have a company background, we have a problem statement. Now let's take a look at why we're having this problem, which we're going to accomplish through the use of a 5-whys diagram. So I want to say, before we start getting into a lot of detail with this, before I worked on any of these deliverables, I set up a team of about 10 individuals from different areas of the company, including sales, project management, electrical engineering, production engineering, and some assembly and other individuals. So I have a mixture of engineers, managers, and directors on this team. So we sat down and we created an affinity diagram as sort of a brainstorming activity, just to get all of our ideas for problems on the table. And then what we did is we took notes from the affinity diagram and we organized it into this 5-whys diagram that you see. So when we started stepping through this, when we started coming to some of the problems where we couldn't answer this why question anymore, we knew that we'd come to a root cause of our problem. And at the end of this practice, we came across 3 root causes. We have lack of communication and training, lack of a standardized process, and project management roles and responsibilities that are not clearly defined. My biggest obstacle with this phase of the project is that I had a lot of difficulty getting a non-technical perspective from my team at DRC. So we are a small organization. We recently developed a layer of middle management, and that layer of middle management came from the engineering pools. So what I did to overcome this challenge is I made sure to invite the managers we have that don't have the technical background, just so I could have a well-rounded viewpoint when I did the root cause analysis. So now that we know why we're having this problem, we need to look at how we can implement it in a way that's user-friendly and in a way that people will accept so that it can be a permanent change. So I created a survey that asked questions on our customers' thoughts for current state, future state, as well as suggestions for improving our process. And I should say too, for this project, because this is an internal project, my customer is either an upstream or downstream department from my development department, which would be, we're talking about electrical engineering and production engineering, or perhaps manufacturing engineering. A customer could also be a department that engages closely with the development department during these APE development processes. So an example would be sales and marketing or project management. So we had 10 individuals fill out this survey, and we came back with 4 main requirements. We have a metric required that tracks the level of customer engagement during our project development. We need 2 flowcharts, one highly detailed for internal training in the engineering departments, and we also need a second flowchart that's basic for the sales and marketing departments to reference. We need to prioritize our APE training, and we also need to update it to include more detail. And lastly, we need to implement some sort of platform for real-time communication between individuals in our teams. So my largest obstacle at this stage was the survey response rate that I was primarily concerned with. To eliminate this challenge, I made sure to specify what the purpose of my survey was, as well as the importance to this capstone. And I'm happy to say I did get a 100% return rate on my surveys. So we know our problem, we know why we're having the problem, we know how we need to implement a change. So now we're ready to kind of measure our current state and actually see the magnitude of our issue, which we're going to accomplish through a control chart. To create these charts, I spoke with the development manager and I obtained data for 12 projects we've done that he's tracked data on. We do track data in 4 main phases, which are definition, development, testing, and production. So I took this data and I formed 4 different control charts that you see here. As you can see, the red line is our actual project durations, and it's much higher than the blue line, which is our estimated durations. I specifically chose individual control chart because, first of all, I only have 1 sample or 1 measurement for each of these projects, and also I don't have a perfect estimated value that I can compare against. And I also think this is just the best way to graphically depict the variation between the estimated and actual durations. So as a result, I realized that our estimated duration per project is about 110 days, and our actual projects run for approximately 411 days, which is an increase of 373%, which, as you may notice, is a little more significant than the 33% that we originally estimated. A couple notes on this data. We had incomplete data to work with, so the information I had showed me duration and start and end dates for each project, but it didn't show me the working hours associated with that duration. So I don't know if a task was on hold for some reason or if a resource was actually fully allocated during that time. The second issue is that the customer can use this system before it's complete. So part of the reason we said that the duration is only 33% off is because the customer starts using this system, but it doesn't transition out of the development department until a couple months later. So it's sort of a hidden variation in the actual and estimated durations. But I'd have to say the data was my largest obstacle. So at this point in the project, we decided to use the average values that we can calculate just to move forward, and we're going to implement a process using M1 shop floor entry to start tracking actual times for each of these tasks. And once we have more accurate information, we'll replace these values. So now we're ready to make a change. I work directly in this development department, so I took a first stab at making a rough draft of this process map. And then I went back and forth with several engineers and managers that have done this, and I did a review about 3 different times before we had a complete and final process map. I can't show you the comprehensive process map for proprietary reasons, but the process map you see here is the basic map we're using for sales and marketing. So the result of this is that we implemented a standard process. We increased our process consistency because now all engineers are performing the process in the same way. And also, because we've increased the consistency, I'm anticipating an increase in our accuracy of estimations. So at this point in the project, I encountered a pretty large challenge with the DRC culture. So we're very progressive, we're very modern, we adapt very quickly to our industry and customer needs. So we really value process flexibility and fluidity. But on the flip side, we have engineers now that think that applying a standard process to what we do is impossible. They don't think it's able, it can be done. So I have to kind of shift the DRC's way of thinking to see that there may be a best method of doing these projects. So this is probably going to be one of the more challenging areas of my project, and I'm going to tackle this in two different ways. Right now we have miscellaneous APE development tasks that are being performed in our production electrical engineering group. So what I'm working on doing is shifting those tasks solely into my APE development group so that we can kind of contain all that while we standardize this process. And I'm also updating our APE training documents around this standard process, so all new engineers that we get at DRC are going to be undergoing this training and learning this process before they ever start a system. We're also starting sort of a retroactive training process where our existing development engineers are going to be retraining on the standard process documents. So now that we've made a change, we need to finally implement some sort of way to monitor this change and see if there's some sort of improvement or if the change has been sufficient, which we're going to accomplish with project metrics. So I sat down with my team. We originally had a list of 20 metrics. We whittled it down to 7 individual metrics, which are these first 7 that you see on the list. And the final one is a group of metrics that I'm calling an aggravation index. And I think all of the other individual metrics are pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to touch on the aggravation index a little bit. So traditionally, an aggravation index is a group of metrics that a company may use to measure their customers' aggravation with the organization's performance. So for example, an airline may track the number of delayed flights per day. They may track the number of minutes that a customer's been on hold. They may track the number of luggage that they've lost that day. At DRC, we're going to repurpose this metric to measure our frustrations with our customer. So we're going to measure level of customer engagement through meeting attendance. So are the right individuals attending all of our meetings, and are they attending on a regular basis? We're also going to track number of days past options list incomplete. And finally, we're going to track the number of outside scope requests that we receive. So to give you a little more information on the options list, at DRC, we need to get some sort of document from the customer that says, here are all the possible options that we might ask for from you. So maybe they have 1 motor, 2 motors, 3 motors, they have to list horsepower. And it's really important that we get this document because if we don't have a complete document past the deadline, it really incurs a lot of significant rework because we have to go back and do a lot of reprogramming, and it makes our process a lot less efficient. So that's why it's important to track the number of days past this milestone for the options list. With the metrics, I started doing a little bit of digging, and I found out that a lot of individuals at DRC aren't familiar with project metrics. We're fantastic at tracking this on our shop floor, but really no one's familiar with this on the engineering level or even the organizational level. So what I need to do is really introduce this idea, and I also need to battle this misconception where some of these process things, a lot of people feel that you can't really quantify these intangible metrics. So I need to kind of find a way to shift people's ways of thinking. So with the way we're tracking metrics now, a lot of people have an idea of the metrics, but it's not written down and there's no formal communication structure, which is dangerous in my mind, because when you have these self-driven metrics that are compartmentalized across the organization, when you lose the individuals that are driving those metrics, you lose your metrics tracking. So at this stage in the process, I halted implementation of project metrics with my team. We sat down and we co-authored a white paper to the upper level management at our company to announce our intent of metrics tracking, set up benchmarking precedents for other departments in our organization, and just kind of announce what we want to do with this information. But I think, especially with something like this, it's so important to get management sponsorship if we want to keep this as a permanent part of our organization. But I really think this is one of the most important things I'll be doing as part of my capstone. So my final results are that I calculated average durations for each stage of our projects. I implemented a standard process, and I introduced performance metrics to our engineering departments. So from a higher level, what I've done is I've set a really healthy foundation to improve our process, and I've also set a framework to monitor these changes in the future. So some of the bigger items I want to touch on that I learned about is just the significance of teamwork. So as a human being, when I look at a problem, I'm naturally going to think that I know how to fix this. I know what the problem is. And when I started sitting down with some of the teammates that I have, they were just blowing me away with some of the statements they would make that I would never have thought of in a million years. I had a project manager throw out a possible cause as lead times for parts, and I would never have thought of that. Especially with reviews of the outputs that I've been making, such as the control or the process map. There's no way I could have done that unless I had these individuals within the team to review my work. So that's key to implementing this change. I learned how to interpret real-world data. So the data that you get is never perfect like you see when you're learning concepts at school. And I had to learn how to make strategic decisions based on the data that I had available to me at the time. I learned the importance of management sponsorship. So making a change is very easy, but making a change stick is difficult. And it's very important to get the right people involved at the right times to make sure that you have a process change that's going to have a long life. And finally, I learned communication and leadership skills by steering this team for the last 4 months. Does anyone have any questions?
How did you perform your voice of customer?
So I just put together a bunch of questions that I tried to leave open-ended. I don't want to lead someone to say that something's a good idea or not. So I just would ask something like, what are your thoughts on standardization? What do you think about our training process right now? How do you think this can be improved? And I just saw if some of the answers correlated what I came up with the 5 whys diagram. And it was a good indicator of the culture as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Not really a question, but I got a comment tonight. Of all the semesters we've done this group really got it as far as the recurring theme was, it's all about people. It really is, and every one of your presentations had that in there. And it was good to see.
Did you guys actually have any other questions for me?
There was a delay. That's how long the delay we get.
Good job.
Nice job, man.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, so a couple of announcements for you guys before you head to the bar. Just a show of hands, because I forgot to mention this when you guys were filling out your photo video release forms. Can you guys just raise your hand if you're okay with me taking down your phone number and email information to contact you in the future as alumni? So are you okay? I send out stuff very sparingly, maybe a couple of times a year to all of our alumni. And also, I do sometimes share job opportunities if anyone is interested. But typically what I'll do is about once a year with my alumni list is just send it out and say, hey, does anybody want to be on? Oh, thank you. Does anyone, just press the silver button on the side. That button right, yep.